Sage, thank you very much. We've had allegations of dirty play, a knee to the groin, a vicious forearm, and players leaving the bench to protect teammates. All of that, and we're only 4 games into a series that looks like is headed to the distance. Let's go inside the Suns and Spurs now with Suns shooting guard Jalen Rose. Jalen, before we get to exactly how you guys were able to come from behind to win, I want to start with what everybody is talking about. Now, Stoudemire said that he was actually leaving the bench to check in at the scorer's table. D'Antoni said afterwards, no, that's not what was going on. Clear it up for us. What exactly was Amare Stoudemire doing?
Well, Stoudemire understood that he was taken out for defensive purposes, being that there was his 5th foul. So after the play, he was designated to go into the game. Obviously, it's going to be some question whether he was actually going into the game after Robert Horry did a shoulder block against Steve Nash into the scorer's table. The league officers are going to be viewing the tape just like the whole world's going to be viewing the tape. And it remains to be seen, obviously, what's going to happen with him.
Jalen,
Diaw.
You're sitting there on the bench. How tempting is it for any bench player, especially in a playoff game that has been so hotly contested, how tempting is it for you to take that step and get out onto the court as an instinctive reaction to protect your teammate?
Well, it's a catch-22, and being a longtime basketball fan, I've seen a lot of brawls happen and a lot of situations happen in basketball, whether you talk about, you know, Kevin McHale and his vicious clothesline, or Kurt Rambis back in the day when the Celtics played against the Lakers, or you talk about Isaiah Thomas driving to the basket with the Pistons against Karl Malone being elbowed, and Walker D. Russell running off the bench to his aid, or Jalen Rose in the 1998 playoffs with the Indiana Pacers against the Chicago Bulls. Reggie Miller kind of gets into an altercation down on the Chicago bench. I take one step on the court, I get suspended for Game 5. So it does happen in the NBA. Circumstances, situations do happen. And there's one other piece of tape that the world's not talking about people leaving the bench, that the NBA will be reviewing also. And that was in the beginning of the 2nd quarter. Francisco Elson does a dunk over the top of James Jones. He flips and he falls on the floor. There's potential to be an altercation there. Tim Duncan leaves the bench. He's past the 3-point line. Bruce Bowen realizes that Tim is off the bench past the 3-point line. He grabs Tim, pulls Tim back on the bench. So they're going to be reviewing the tape of Amare and Boris leaving the bench, but they're also going to be reviewing Tim Duncan leaving the bench in the 2nd quarter as well.
See, that's the beauty of this series, Jalen. Even after the games are over, you guys are still playing games with one another. That's nice to know.
The game within the game, and the only thing is that being a big-time basketball fan and a player as well, you hate to see a series marred by suspension and things that happen beyond the score of the game. You want to see the best players decide who eventually wins each playoff series.
All right, you say that, but Jalen, right now, Tim Legler joined us at the top of the show, and he said that the pressure that the league office faces now in making this decision is immense because, in his words, he believes that the winner of this series will be your NBA champion for this season. And I know that there's a lot of basketball to play, but what should the league do in handing out suspensions here?
Thank you, Tim. We hope so, and we hope we're that team. But in all honesty, I think it's a tough call because Amare did put 1 foot on the floor. Boris Diaw did put 1 foot on the floor, but they weren't a part of the altercation. And like I said, it happened to me before, and I was nowhere near the altercation. I actually stepped off the Pacers bench 1 step when the altercation was all the way down on the Chicago Bulls bench, 94 feet away, yet I was suspended 1 game. So it's going to be an interesting call. That's why the guys at the league office get paid the big bucks, and we got to turn around and wait to see what happens. The play with Robert Horry and Steve Nash kind of rivaled Baron Davis against Derek Fisher, except the scorer's table was involved, and Steve didn't lay down as long as Derek Fisher did.
Does Robert get a game for that?
I think he does get a game. I think it was a flagrant foul. I think the league doesn't allow that kind of activity. Robert Horry, I don't see him as being a dirty player. He has a lot of film of playoff experience that he will be proud of. That's one that he will not be proud of. I think he will get suspended at least 1 game and play continues.
Jalen, this has been a physical series. We've had a lot of these small instances leading up to this. Is there something the league could have done earlier but didn't that could have curbed some of the rough stuff from last night?
It's playoff basketball. It should be tough. The fans want it to be tough. The players, the coaches, everybody wants it to be more tough than the regular season, and it is. So there's going to be instances where guys get a little chippy, guys get knocked off their square a little bit. That's what happens in playoff basketball. But there's nothing I think the league should have done early in the series, but I think the situation with Robert Horry, that's the circumstance that crosses the line. So he's going to be the guy, unfortunately, that I know for a fact that will be at least suspended for his actions.
You know for a fact. Have you heard something already, or you're just supposing that there's no way the league can't suspend him?
There's no way the league can suspend. It's being replayed over and over again. It's well talked about. It's well discussed. And you have to send a message not only to Robert Horry and the San Antonio Spurs and the Phoenix Suns for having a real physical series, but you want to send a message to your fans and to the rest of the league that you won't tolerate that kind of activity, especially at the end of the game where the game is decided. Oh, and by the way, against the two-time MVP Steve Nash. So I think that he probably will get suspended.
Speaking of, oh, by the way, you guys won the basketball game last night, and what a pivotal game it was, because now you get home court back. How were you able to dial it up down the stretch and go on that late run to get a tough win and a tough place to get one?
Wow, I guess a basketball game did happen last night, huh?
Yeah, it took us a while to get there.
I think at the end of the day, we play with a sense of urgency. Anytime you're facing a 3-1 deficit, kind of like New Jersey is against Cleveland, but you're going against the San Antonio Spurs, a team that has 3 championship banners hanging on the court. When you're playing against that team, they're so mentally and emotionally tough that I think in the fourth quarter, we decided to just go all out and play each possession like it was our last. We did a good job of understanding that when Tony Parker makes his advance pass to the right wing, if it's not Manu Ginobili getting a pick and roll, he's going to go through and he's going to get a pick and roll on the left side with one of the bigs. We did a good job of jumping Tony Parker, and we also did a good job of double teaming Tim Duncan, understanding that here's a guy that's averaging over 30 points in a series, that if you don't do something against Tim Duncan, he will send your entire team home crying for the season. So we decided to be more aggressive against him, and I think it worked.
Well, it definitely worked late in the game, and now it's all even. It's become a 3-game series. Jalen, thanks for joining us, and best of luck the rest of the way.
Thank you very much.
Game 5 in Phoenix tomorrow night. That is must-see TV. It tips just after 10:30 Eastern Time.